Art has long been a real financial product and has successfully become a self-sufficient investment sphere. Today, investment funds, banks, and huge corporations earn money from art as much as collections, auction houses, and gallerists. However, despite the financial success of this sphere, art is still considered a vocation, not a profession. And the collector is not simply considered a buyer, but a connoisseur of the beautiful. Collecting as a hobby began to develop actively closer to the 20th century. Collections consisted of a variety of items, while collectors used to unite by interest and hold events for trading and exchanging their items. One of the most common types of collecting is numismatics, which means collecting coins. The number of Philately fans, those who collect postage stamps, does not come short either. By the way, in philatelic societies, there are many awards for contributions to the development of this business. The most famous of them are Crawford Medal, Philatelic Nobel Prize, and Smithsonian Philatelic Achievement Award. Gizat Tabuldin hasn't received any of these awards yet, but this does not make him any less happy. He is an honored local historian who loves collecting stamps. His passion came into being in childhood when he found a coin from the Russian Empire period in the backyard. This discovery awakened his interest in history. At the age of 12, together with the boys from the neighborhood, he began collecting stamps. In the middle of the 70s, Gizat Tabuldin started to take part in specialized exhibitions and gain his first victories. When I was 14 years old, I participated in a philately exhibition in Atbasar city. Although my stamps were typical for that time, I won first place. Naturally, as I grew up, quality became more important for me than quantity. Now I am more interested in old stamps of the Russian Empire, the Third Reich, and stamps specific to different countries. In Gizat Tabuldin's opinion, stamp collecting develops a person's outlook, interest in geography, national and cultural features. You can participate in the discussion about stamps, its types, and various stamp perforating techniques. Let's take the first Kazakh stamp from 1991. Everyone thinks that the stamp with the golden man was the first one. But in fact, it's the one with Gagarin and the word Kazakhstan imprinted on it. Over the decades, the collection has been enriched with a variety of stamps. The most valuable to the owner are stamps of 1972 issue, which inspired him to take up this hobby. Although they are not in demand on the market, they are most cherished. Gizat also has some rare stamps in the collection. Among them is a stamp that was presented to him by the Mongolian president.
В 1962 году 800-летие
1962 marked the 800th birth anniversary of Genghis Khan, and the Mongolian government decided to issue commemorative stamps set featuring him. This is the first depiction of Genghis Khan on official philatelic stamps of Mongolia. Mongolian president's assistant presented me with this stockbook at the World Congress of Mongolian Philatelists.
Здесь монгольские редкие марки, но самым дорогим, самым на сегодняшний день редким, и у коллекционеров в мире она встречается в классу особо раритетных монет.
There are many rare stamps, but the rarest one is this one. It belongs to the class of rare coins. It's a set of 4 quite simple stamps with Genghis Khan himself on them. It's an official gift from the Mongolian government for my research on the imperial and post-imperial history of Genghis Khan, and it's in perfect condition. Books, especially old books, are no less in demand among collectors. The rarities are of greatest value. Even sophisticated collectors can be surprised by the prices of some copies. The value of some of them is even estimated at millions of dollars. The first place in this rating belongs to the Codex Leicester. This is Leonardo da Vinci's handwritten notebook that provides an insight into the famous artist and inventor. inventors, scientific observations, and theories. The manuscript is also unique due to the fact that it is written in mirror writing, which indicated that you need to use a mirror to read it. By the way, this method was invented by Da Vinci himself in the 16th century. An Aktobe bookseller of vintage books, Madi Raimov, also had a great collection that he's proud of. The most expensive book in his collection is estimated at $700. I really love flea markets. The ones abroad are very interesting. We don't have similar ones. That's the most important thing. This is the only copy. So I always try to buy such books immediately. When I traveled, I came across some rare copies which you couldn't even find in libraries in Kazakhstan. However, at a flea market somewhere in Europe, an old lady sells them for pennies on the dollar. That's how my interest in books started.
Есть вещи, которые в библиотеке ты не найдешь. Единственное, что хорошо, что я всегда почты сразу там, где за границей бываю.
Since they are quite heavy, I don't carry them with me, but send them home by post. It's a convenient way to expand the library with books from around the world. For example, in Georgia, you hardly find any books at the stores. You have to search online. But at the flea markets, you can discover some copies that have not been published for a long time. Now, Madi Raimov's collection consists of about 2,000 books. The main bulk was collected during the last 15 years.
Отец у меня и дед любил читать. Даже когда дед уже на пенсию выходил, он работал.
My father and grandfather loved to read. Even when my grandfather retired, he worked at the post office. In the evening, when the mail was distributed, we used to receive the mail even before the recipients. Back then, people used to order certain books by mail. I guess that's when I developed an interest in books. Then I got impressed by encyclopedias. I love collecting old encyclopedias.
Энциклопедии. Очень обожаю. Собирать энциклопедии.
Rare and vintage editions have long been in high demand. They are divided into two types, second-hand and antique. More recent editions of used books are called second-hand, while the editions that were used before the middle of the 19th century are considered antiques. Great interest in rare antique books and their collecting is called bibliophilia. Meanwhile, the cost of early editions is constantly changing depending on demand, rarity, and historical value. The copies of incunabula have the highest value. Incunabula are early printed books published from the mid-1440s all the way until 1500. Incunabula editions were very limited and did not exceed 300 pieces, which is why a very small number have survived to this day, and almost all of them are kept in public libraries or private collections. What could be there so unusual and unique about the Napoleon's bust statue? It's all because of its remarkably small size. The French commander's bust is as tiny as a quarter of a sugar grain. The violin here is only about 7 millimeters big, which equals to the size of a grain of rice. A tiny backgammon made of gold and volcanic glass is constructed on 2/2 of another grain. You will be astonished to lay your eyes upon this minuscule camel caravan. It is carved in the eye of a needle. This gold Paganini figurine might seem ordinarily small too, but in fact it's much smaller than you might imagine. The famous musician's face is 50 times smaller than a grain of semolina. Naturally, these miniature works of art can be only seen with the help of optical magnification of 5,000 times. All this is the work of Edward Tergazarian, who is rightfully considered the founder of micro art or micro miniature. This unique art is incredibly complex in terms of technique. These miniature masterpieces are listed in the Guinness Book of World Records and have been presented to many famous people, including the British Queen Elizabeth II. Yuri Kastanyans is proud of his great-uncle. Many people who know Yuri are convinced that he inherited the talent from his ancestor, although the artist himself is not sure of this.
У него свой профиль.
His craft is micro art, while I have a different one. It will take a tremendous amount of work for me to achieve his level of mastery. As a child, I spent some time with my great-uncle, but after growing up, I barely saw him. We lived in a different city, and after the collapse of the Soviet Union, our communication almost ceased. It was difficult back then to stay in touch.
Переезды же, так сказать, стали тяжелыми.
Wood sculpture is a fairly common phenomenon in art, hence it's not always easy to impress someone with it. But Yuri Kastanyans creates outstanding pieces that attract art connoisseurs to his house museum all the way in Öskemän. The artist possesses not only practical skills but also knowledge about the principles of composition. Sculptural wood carving is a special direction in the artistic wood processing. This ancient art has not lost its importance today. Wood carvers claim that their main goal is to bring the wonders of nature back to the modern world. Yuri Kastanyans uses different colors of various types of wood in his work. All of them are skillfully selected to match each other. It almost seems like the artist will press a secret button and each character will come to life, turning the story into a movie frame.
Раньше никакой концепции не было, просто резали то, что понравится.
Earlier, there was no concept, we just carved whatever we liked. We could explore various themes from Aldar Kose to deities. Then we decided to focus only on one theme at a time. For example, we've created different art pieces in the theme of Adam and Eve.
Адам и Ева. То есть тема одна, они, конечно, все разные работы. Следующая тема, которую мы...
Our next theme, which we've almost finished, relates to Kazakhstan's history. It underwent a couple of changes and eventually transformed into a project Great People of the Great Steppe.
Проект «Великие люди Великой Степи».
The collection of Yuri Kastanyans' works is impressive. No two wood sculptures from the collection are alike. Each of them has unique texture, shape and color. Naturally, the exhibits require particular attention and proper maintenance. Many factors such as variations of lighting, angles and distance affect the viewer's perception of the art piece. Each work actively interacts with both the environment and the viewer, filling the space around it with emotional and ideological content.
Вообще, музеи все строят на теневых сторонах.
In general, museums need to be built facing north. I did not know that.
И шторы.
Since my house faces the south, I had to install mirror windows and curtains. The ultraviolet light and humid air can damage the exhibits, but here the conditions are normal.
Дерево не касалось улицы. Ну, контраста температур, если правильно сказать, и влажности. Здесь контраста почти нет. Ну, днем и...
The main thing is to prevent the wood from exposure to contrasting temperatures and humidity. Every serious collector knows this.
У кого есть какие-то коллекции серьезные.
This place is probably every record collector's dream. 30,000 editions kept here is not the only reason. This is where the history of music is preserved. The Museum of Gramophone Records in Pavlodar is unique in the whole post-Soviet space, and maybe even in the whole world. Its founder and curator was the world-famous record collector, composer, musicologist, writer and teacher, the late Naum Schaffer. His collection includes 1,500 reel tapes, the same number of cassette tapes, old magazines, books and newspapers. One of the oldest records in Schaffer's collection was released more than a century ago. You can check its purest sound on this long-lived gramophone, which is almost 120 years old. I collect music, not music performers, said Naum Schaffer.
He is not just a collector. In fact, no one has ever called him that officially in print. Perhaps Solonenko was the one to call him a collector musicophile in a letter. There are not just hundreds, but countless amounts of musical literature he'd been collecting all his life. Naturally, he was also considered an educator.
Thousands of music and literature lovers from all over the world visit this temple of art. During his lifetime, Naum Schaffer gathered a unique collection of the best music of all times and peoples. He also revealed unknown pages of many writers and composers' life and work.